Hello, I'm Simon Whistler, you're watching TopTenzNet, and in the video today, the top 10 outlandish exploits of conniving con artists. They lie, they cheat, and they get you to agree to what they are about to steal. But one thing that we can agree upon is that con artists are firmly embedded as some of popular culture and history's most colourful characters. In this video, we're exploring some of the most fascinating or improbable excerpts from the history of scam artistry and truly astounding incidents defining the lives of the undeniable dubious characters who fill our rogues gallery. From Ponzi's shocking good deed to a man who sold the Taj Mahal to the eerie golden chest ruse, keep your mind open to discovery, but always remember, do not trust. Number 10. Charles Ponzi. Sometimes there is more than meets the eye, and a taker is also a great giver. Charles Ponzi was an Italian-born swindler famous for inventing his namesake, the Ponzi scheme. He was assisting Italian illegal immigrants and concocting a multitude of methods by which he persuaded people to part with their money. But despite his history, which includes jail time, Ponzi not only engaged in scams and their associated ventures. Ponzi actually went further than giving the shirt off his back and in fact donated sections of his skin to a female nurse who had been seriously burned in an accident on a mining site. While he was a swindler, he was clearly no skinflint when it came to his own skin in this curious turn of redeeming action. Mining company hospital nurse Pearl Gossett lost extensive skin to a stove explosion as she was preparing a meal for a patient. Everyone in the camp was a skinflint and unwilling to help, as Ponzi discovered after asking a doctor about her condition. A total of 72 square inches of skin was taken from the clearly generous, and in this case noble, scam artist's thighs, while yet another 50 square inches had to be taken from the man's back. The good news is that both of these people ultimately recovered. Number 9. Ferdinand Waldo Demara. For any government force in charge of defense, national security, and military matters, being conned is just not good PR. After all, we trust armed forces to defend us, not be preyed upon themselves by scammers. But one imposter by whom to measure other imposters, a gentleman named Ferdinand Waldo Demara, engaged in scams that were not only audacious, but created massive endangerment situations and even jeopardized military operations. His trickery included pretending to be competent in a variety of occupations and proceeding to wing it as he collected revenues for the duties he was not qualified to perform. Incredibly, the American-born Demara scammed the Royal Canadian Navy during the Korean War by pretending to be a surgeon named Joseph Saar. Indeed, he came aboard a vessel under this identity and was paid the rate of a surgeon. Worse yet, he actually performed operations in his assumed role on the vessel before he was caught. Because the Navy was embarrassed about not performing a background check, a decision was made not to prosecute him. Were he to be prosecuted, the mistake of being scammed would make it further into the public eye. A movie was actually made based on Demara's exploits called The Great Imposter, albeit featuring a much more handsome actor, Tony Curtis, rather than the real Demara. Number 8. John Brinkley. One might say that a con artist can benefit from having a certain physical trait, but in the bizarre case of John Brinkley, a scam artist operating in the 20s and 30s, that matter was the very pretext of his subsequent absurd and medically intrusive actions. In those pre-Viagra days, the sometimes desperate desire for effective performance enhancement led to some pretty outlandish measures, and with desire came an opportunity for scammers to cash in. One scam, to top them all, was a gonad scam, and it was a pretty great one. For the, shall we say, creative John Brinkley, the idea came after a discussion with one patient to develop a supposed cure for impotence that involved nothing less than the awful and of course useless method of opening the testicles of a human male patient seeking a boost in performance with a slight incision and then proceeding to simply implant goat gonads into the testicles before sewing them up. While he was pursued and eventually forced to stop his procedures, his testicle tomfoolery under the guise of medicine actually made him something of a hero to those he duped. As a result of Brinkley's acquired popularity, he even came close to being elected as the governor of New Mexico. Number 7. The man who swindled Mussolini and a detective. German-American con artist Joseph Weil was a scammer who understood people well, a little too well perhaps. Stating that people were 99% animal and 1% human, he pulled off scams so daring that they might seem preposterous. Some were small, including touting medicinal tonics that were, in fact, nothing more than packaged rainwater that was probably polluted. For example, while Mussolini is notorious as the fascist dictator whose speeches pulled Italy into the World War II axis, Weil tricked Mussolini out of money and established himself as a hustler so adept that he could trick a dictator. And, well, how much did Weil swindle from Mussolini? Well, that would be the sum of $2 million, which was certainly a loss to the fascist dictator, despite his ability to amass the funds for war. Perhaps more shocking than this, though, the man even swindled a detective of the not-so-small sum of $30,000 while he was escorting the con man to prison. Weil excelled in what one might call social skills, yet his ability to read people was so well developed that he could tailor his statements to match exactly what people wished to hear. As a result of success in manipulative masterminding and scam development, Weil is suspected of having duped victims out of more than $8 million over the course of his career. Number 6. The spacesuit scenario. Tinfoil hat wearing may be a staple of ludicrous conspiracy theory portrayals and seem to be a more than tired cliche. While known as a subject of amusement and horror primarily in North America and Europe, a real-life tinfoil scenario, albeit a full-body version for a different reason, transpired in India. In early May of 2018, two scam artists, Verinder Mohan Bra and son Nitin Mohan Bra, who constituted a father and son team in India, took things 2 steps further by dressing head to toe in foil replica spacesuits that looked quite convincing. Pretending to work for NASA, the duo duped people based on their dramatic appearance and the electrifying buzz of the story that accompanied their ridiculous but impossible techie appearance. Like space-age cosplay enthusiasts gone rogue, their dress served to represent a role that was a fantasy far from reality. Dressed to dupe, the two Bras claimed that they had come into the possession of a copper plate that could draw electricity from thunderbolts, and magically, well, actually through some bogus physics, proceeded to draw rice. They managed to convince a businessman to spend more than $280,000 on the plate before they were finally arrested. Number 5. Juan Guzman-Betancourt. Able to speak several languages, well-organized, and giving the impression of the highest levels of wealth, Juan Guzman-Betancourt was a scammer and a thief. While his ways of gaining real, albeit stolen wealth for himself were wrong, he did not directly scam his victims in his most notorious modus operandi prior to capture. Instead, he dropped the ruse on those his victims trusted most: hotel staff, getting access to their riches once he was let in. And so, how did he do this? Well, he simply looked the part and would ask the hotel for a spare key to his room, which he had apparently lost. Once let in, the brilliantly disguised man would proceed to pack up the valuables he wanted and then vacate. As a result of his highly successful escapades, he ended up wanted in several countries once he had struck and run. Changing his story, appearance, and nation or region of operation multiple times, he was able to stay ahead of his victims, their unwitting helpers, and the authorities. Eventually arrested in London, he was able to trick a guard into giving him an escape opportunity before he set off again. Eventually he was recaptured in Vermont. The authorities were suspicious of him, perhaps on the account of him being deported 3 times from the US previously. Number 4. The golden booze. In case of theft, one usually assumes that a valuable object will be in fact directly taken out of someone's possession. But what about a scam so twisted that a valuable object is given to someone, which results in an external inside job that combines theft with clever scammer mastery? Over 230 years ago, in the minute land of Liechtenstein, a woman known as the Golden Booze, nicknamed so for her blonde hair, was a confidence woman named Barbara Ernie, who developed a trick based upon the concept of making the issue about whether the victim is trustworthy and skipping past the issue of whether the scammer is not to be trusted. Ernie would ask targets to take care of a valuable golden chest for her, implying that she trusted them. Upon agreeing to care for the valuable treasure chest for her, the victim would then have their house robbed in an inside job, literally, because it entailed a small assistant to Ernie emerging from the container, robbing the house, and leaving. No less than 17 homes were burgled in this way. In 1785, Ernie was executed for her crimes and was the last person to be put to death in the tiny nation. Number 3. The Eiffel Tower thief and salesman. It's not generally possible to steal a building directly, for the key element in most thefts is a getaway with the contraband. And how could you actually steal a building and skip town short of loading a mobile home onto a truck? Well, if you are a pioneering scammer, you could stop short of stealing a building and instead create a situation where you convince your dupe that they are the lucky opportunist legally buying a coveted building from yours truly. One Victor Lustig was an American hustler extraordinaire of Austro-Hungarian origin who was ultimately sentenced to 20 years in prison in Alcatraz. Before coming to the United States, where he even worked on a bid to scam the notorious Al Capone, Lustig actually succeeded in persuading gullible dupes to part with their money, not on one occasion, but in two separate incidents, in exchange for a piece of construction that was no less than the iconic Eiffel Tower itself. His sales of the Eiffel Tower prompted the no-gooder to flee the United States, where he scammed that country with counterfeit money distribution schemes. Most creatively, he brilliantly scammed would-be scammers with a wooden box device that was demonstrated with the help of a clever ruse as a machine that could copy money. Number 2. The Fake Nation Project of Gregor MacGregor. We may know all about the debates on what constitutes or should not constitute illegal immigration, but what is one's immigration status when the country to which you intend to arrive is itself nothing more than a fraud? Creating a fake nation with seemingly all of the bona fide trappings of a real nation has got to rank highly as one of the most ambitiously dastardly deeds ever. One such Republic of Poyets was the brainchild of flagrant and interestingly named scam artist Gregor MacGregor, a British army man who visited Honduras and Belize before returning to London and falsely claiming to have received a land grant from a leader of indigenous origin. The fraud proceeded to cost over 200 lives as MacGregor printed flags, distributed bogus currency, and even convinced numerous investors and settlers to put up money and actually immigrate to the new land. And what was the result of all of this? Well, newcomers found little more than shacks, with more than 200 settlers dying from disease, poor sanitation, and unsatisfactory living conditions. MacGregor escaped to France, attempted to conduct the scam upon the French, was arrested, and then returned to London before leaving for Venezuela. The opportunistic MacGregor proceeded to assist the country in gaining independence, receiving local recognition for participation in the struggle. Number 1. Natwarlal, the salesman of the Taj Mahal. While one Austro-Hungarian who came to the United States is notorious for selling the Eiffel Tower to unsuspecting dupes, across the seas India was not immune to the same racket. And what the Eiffel Tower is to France, the glorious Taj Mahal is, and then some, to India. And it is the Taj Mahal that one huckster extraordinaire from India decided to sell. With an ear-catching name, the shyster born in India by the name of Natwarlal was a scam artist who perpetuated a hoax that played out on a scale no less than colossal in its grand audacity. While Victor Lustig is known for endeavoring to sell the Eiffel Tower, Natwarlal sold the Taj Mahal, the architectural pride of India, on 3 different occasions, making arrangements to collect money from those deceived by his wheeling and dealing antics, while the priceless real estate simply sat there, obviously unavailable for purchase or any other change of ownership. Natwarlal was not only devious, he was also quite determined. Not to be stopped, Natwarlal's sale of assets that were far from his to sell went to even more bizarre extremes. In a truly egregious case, he embarked on negotiations to make a deal to transfer the title of the Parliament of India and ownership of its constituents. And with that, it really does seem that sometimes the grandest scams are the ones that slip by most quietly. So I really hope you enjoyed that video, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel for brand new videos every day of the week. Also, I've got another channel, it's called BIOGRAPHICS. It's biographies of notable people from the present day, as well as history from Elon Musk to Osama bin Laden. You can check it out through the icon on the screen now. But if you want something else to watch right now, why not check out another TopTenz video or a biographics video over there on the right. And as always, thank you for watching.